Hi, I'm Jane from Poppy Patchwork, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make a 12-inch block called Broken Dishes. So for this block you're going to need two 4.5 by 4.5 inch squares in background fabric and four 3.5 by 3.5 inch squares. In fabric A, you're going to need one 4.5 inch square. In fabric B, you're going to need two 5.5 inch squares. In fabric C, you're going to need four 3.5 inch squares. And in fabric D, you're going to need four 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles and four 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. To help you design your blocks, I've got this Quilt Block Notebook which is available on Amazon. Scan the code below and it will take you straight to the page to buy it. So the first thing we're going to use are the 4.5 inch squares in the background fabric. And we are going to cut these in half across the diagonal. And then you're going to need the 4.5 inch square in fabric A. And this is the center piece of the block. Now I'm going to fold this in half in one direction like this, and then I'm going to take two of the triangles and along that cut edge I'm going to fold that in half also. Now that cut edge is on the bias, so it's really quite stretchy now, so you do have to be careful with it. Then we're going to pin this right sides together with that finger press mark at the halfway points. So I'm going to pop a pin in there, then I'm going to pop a pin in at each side. I'm going to repeat that on the opposite edge. I'm going to take that over to the sewing machine, but one of the tips I saw on Just Get It Done Quilting was to cut off these pointy bits here, which will mean when we come to the sewing machine it's much easier to sew a nice straight line without these pieces getting in the way. So I'm not going to be mega precise about this, but I am just going to even them up. So I'm going to go over to the sewing machine now. So I'm just going to sew these pieces together, right sides together with a 1/4 inch seam. So we're going to set those seams and then press towards the triangles. And now I'm just going to fold this in half to identify that halfway point. And I will do the same with those triangle pieces. So folding these in half and giving them a quick press. So now I'm going to pin the other two triangles right sides together, matching those halfway points up on the other opposite sides of the square. Okay, so I'm back at the sewing machine And now I can just snip these little tails that are extending out beyond the straight edge. So once again, we're going to sew right sides together with a 1/4 inch seam. So back of the ironing board, we're just going to set those seams and press towards the triangles again. So now we're going to trim this down. So to trim this, you need to line a 1/4 inch up on the ruler at this point here on the block. And then you also want to make sure that a line on the ruler is running straight through these center points here, just to make sure you're getting a nice even cut on this side. And you go round all 4 sides. So that is now trimmed, and now we need fabric B, which is our 5.5 inch squares, and we need to cut these in half across the diagonal. So these are now going to go around the unit like so. So I'm going to identify the halfway point on 2 of these triangles. If you think you're not going to be able to see that press, you can put a pin in it. And then what you do is you line your pin right sides together with that point here on your unit. You pin the pieces together. And you do that on opposite sides. And like I did before, I'm just going to cut these pointy tails off. Not up to the edge, you don't need to do that, but you're just trying to make them straight. So I'm going to sew these right sides together with a 1/4 inch seam. So back over at the ironing board, we're going to set the seams and we're going to press towards the triangles. And now I'm going to fold these in half to identify that halfway point. Then with right sides together, I'm going to match that halfway point up where the point on the block is. And now those are ready to be sewn together. So back at the sewing machine, we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. Now back at the ironing board, we're now going to set those seams again and press towards the triangles. Then, like we did before, we're going to trim this. So lining the ruler, we're going to line the 1/4 inch line on the ruler where the 1/4 inch, where your point is here, and then you're going to make sure that there's a nice straight edge going down the seams here so that you get a nice straight cut. And you're going to do that on all 4 sides. So that is the centerpiece of your block, and that's the economy block. Okay, we're going to put that to one side now, and we're going to be using the 3.5 inch squares in fabric C and the background fabric. Now I cut these out properly. These are 3.5 inch squares, and I've cut these out wrong. These are 3.5 by 3.25, but because I have cut them out bigger than I need and I'm going to trim them back down, I'm not going to worry about that too much. So what we need to do is draw a line on the reverse of the background fabric, a line across the diagonal. So I start with the pencil in the middle and draw to one of the corners, then go back to the middle and draw to the other corner. And then I'm going to match that right sides together with the fabric C. And as I said, it is a little bit short in one direction, so I'm just going to flip it over and make sure it's nicely centered. Pop it back and put a pin them together. Now when we take that to the sewing machine, I am going to sew a 1/4 inch away from this line on both sides of the line. Now for Christmas I was given a Seam So Easy guide by Laurie Holt, so I'll show you that, and I am going to try it out now. So hopefully this means I don't need to keep drawing these lines. I can just match these together. I'm going to pop a pin in them. Oh, that wasn't right sides. So match them right sides together. Just check. Yeah, that's right sides. I'm going to pop a pin in these, and hopefully when I take it over to the sewing machine, this new Seam So Easy guide is going to help me sew a 1/4 inch either side of that center line without having actually drawn the line on the back of the fabric. And my hope is that's just going to speed up my sewing when I'm doing half square triangles. So I'm going to take those over to the sewing machine. So I've sewn the first one by following the line, lining the 1/4 inch foot against the line and sewing a 1/4 inch away. And now I'm going to line up these corners in the diagonal are lined up with this line here on the Seam So Easy guide. And now I'm going to do the next one. So raise the foot a little to get that square in there. Now I do wonder, if I had larger squares I wouldn't be able to see that line, so I think that's a little bit of a drawback, but I am working with squares that are small enough that I can see that line. And now I'm going to do the last one. so I'm just going to cut these apart. It is very different following the line rather than the needle when you're sewing. So this first one has the line drawn on it. So I'm going to line the edge of my 1/4 inch foot along that line and sew 1/4 inch away from the line. And now this one doesn't have the line drawn on it. Instead, I'm lining the corner piece up with the line on the Seam So Easy guide. Just raise it slightly so I can put the square in. So I can see that I'm actually going down the wrong side because that's the side I've already sewn. So I've got to flip it round. Don't want to sew over what I've already done. And now I'm lining that corner up with the line on the Seam So Easy guide. Okay. So I think a 3.5 inch square is about the biggest I can do in order to be able to see the line. Okay, so feedback so far is there's a limit to how big your squares can be for you to be able to see that line on the Seam So Easy guide, and also you have to divert your attention away from the needle and towards this line here. That's just going to take a little bit of getting used to. Now we're going to go and take these over and cut them. So I'm back over at the cutting board. I'm just going to take those pins out. So this is the first one I did that had the line on it, and so now in order to get our 2 half square triangles, we cut along that line. And when you line that up, you can see that your stitch line is a 1/4 inch away from that drawn line. So that's exactly what we wanted. Now for this one, I didn't have the drawn line on there. We used the seam guide. But in the same way, we are just going to cut from each corner across the diagonal. And if I line the ruler up like that, where the drawn line would have been, and then I can cut and see if I get 1/4 inch. So I think the stitching was a little bit off on that. That was probably me rather than the guide. So let's see what this one's like. Okay, that's much better. Stitching's much more where I would expect it to be. And check this final one out. Now, oh wait, that looks like it's 1/2 inch on that side. Let me check this one. Yeah, that was just 1/4 inch. So this one is not a 1/4 inch away. It's nearly 1/2 inch away, that stitching on that side. And again on this side. So I've definitely done something wrong with that. So I need to unpick that and re-sew that line. So I will stop the video whilst I unpick it. Okay, so I've unpicked that and I'm going to try again. I'm going to try lining this up better. So I'm wanting to get the corner lined up on the line. And keep my eye on that all the time. Okay, so I'm going to cut it and repeat on the other side. Yes, I can see where I stitched it before, and I definitely went off the line. So it does require you to keep your eye on that line, and I think because it's different from what you would normally do, it's just a case of getting used to doing that. I think there are definite time savings in not having to draw a line in which to sew against. So here we go again. Okay, I'm going to take a picture, and it's possible that you will be able to see the original holes from the stitch line and what they look like now. So back over at the cutting mat, I'm now going to line the ruler between the two corners and have a look to see where that stitch line is now. And yet that is much more, 1/4 of an inch away. So I'm just going to cut that. So we now have our half square triangles. So as I've said before in my other videos, there are 2 ways of cutting these. So I'll demonstrate the first way. So this will be if you don't have one of those specialty rulers, if you are just using a standard square ruler like this. So for this you need to press your seams to one side. So I'm just going to finger press that, and then I'm going to use this roller and roller it out into place. So now that I've done that, I get my square ruler, and we are trimming these to, let me just check my pattern which I've written out in the book. So we're going to be trimming these to 2.5 inches. So I line up the 2.5 inches and I just make it a little bit bigger there on both sides. So it's a little bit bigger than 2.5 on the left side and the bottom side, and I've lined this diagonal line on the ruler along the stitch line, and now I'm going to trim up the right side and along the top. I'm then going to turn that unit round. Where was I? I'm going to turn that unit, that's where I was, goodness, like that. And now I'm going to turn it round like so. Gosh, I'm getting myself all in the muddle. There we go. So now I'm going to line that diagonal line up along the seam, and I'm going to line the 2.5 inches of the ruler along those freshly cut edges. Once I've done that, I'm now going to go trimming it up one side and along the top. So now I have a half square triangle that measures 2.5 inches. Now I actually prefer to use this ruler, which is the Quilt in the Day triangle square up ruler. So for this, I don't need to press the seams in any direction yet. I take the ruler and I line the 2.5 inch line of the ruler along the stitching, and then I simply trim up one side and down the other side. I do that for all of my remaining half square triangles. So now that I've done that, I can decide how I'm going to press those seams. And because I want to be able to match all the points up nicely, I'm probably going to press them all open. I'm going to set the seam and press it open from the wrong side. And then flip it over and press those seams open from the top. And with those ones that I use the speciality ruler, just need to snip the dog ears off. So now that we've done that, we can start to lay all the pieces together and start sewing the block together. So we have this one in the center here. So I'm going to refer back to my quilt block notebook to see how it's laid out. So the rectangles go down here, and next to these are those half square triangles, background coming in towards the center. And then the corners are made up of fabric Ds again. So if I try and lay this out, that is how the block comes together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these pieces onto these half square triangles onto the rectangle pieces here. And I'm just going to make sure, referring back to my diagram, that all the background pieces are meant to point into the center like this. So now that I've got these pinned, I'm going to take them back over to the sewing machine. And I'm going to sew those half square units right sides together along the short edge of the rectangles. And where I can, I'm going to sew towards the bulky end of that seam. So that is the 4 half square triangles attached to one side of the rectangle pieces, and snipping them apart, and now we're going to go and attach the other half square triangles to the other side. So that I can sew the bulky end towards the bulky end, I'm flipping this around so that I can see the rectangle is uppermost. So lining those edges up, I'll sew with a 1/4 inch seam. So I'm going to snip these now and return them to the block layout before I decide which way I'm going to press those seams. So I'm back over and I'm popping these back where they should be. Now I think they're like this. I'll just check my diagram in my book. Yeah, that's right. So the background should be coming in towards the center block, like that. So as I can see from here, we're not going to be matching these seams here with any seams on here. So we can either press them to one side or we can press them open. I am going to press them open because that will give a flatter finish. So as usual, I'm going to set the seams first before I press them open. I find it easier to press the seams open if I start where there is no seam crossing over. And I press them open from the reverse and then turn it over and press them open from the front. So now they're all pressed, we'll go back to the block layout. So now we're back at the block layout. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this corner square onto this long edge here. And I'm going to do the same over here. And I'm going to repeat that at the other end. And I'm going to pin these pieces onto the top of the main center block. When I take this piece over to the sewing machine, I'm going to sew it this way up so that I can see where it crosses over here, and that's where I want to make sure that I sew my seam line, just so that I can turn it through and have a beautiful point there. So as I said, I want to sew this so that I can see this point here. So I'm going to have that facing me. So as I'm coming towards it, I'm just going to stop and make sure that that stitch line's in the right place. I kind of want it to be about one thread to the right of that point. I'm going to snip those and repeat at the other side. So I'm going to take these back to the block layout and decide which way I want to press the seams. So I'm back here at the block layout. I have those there and the points look good to me. And we have these side pieces here. So what I want is to make sure that I match these points here up very nicely. So in which case that means I'm going to press these seams all open. So we'll put these back in the block layout. And so what we're going to do is we're going to match those seams using the perfect positioning technique. I do have a video on this, and if you right click on the link above, it'll open it up in another window for you. Now we're ready to take that over to the sewing machine for the final seams of the block. Okay, so we have now finished this, and I'm going to press those seams open. I'm going to start by setting the seams and then pressing them open. And there we go, the completed block. Congratulations, you have made broken dishes. Here are some quilt options. This is an illustration of the quilt repeating the same block. There is no sashing or borders, but the use of the white background fabric in the block allows the design and fabrics to stand out. This is an illustration of the quilt repeating the same block placed on point. There is no sashing or borders, but you would need to add blocks in background fabric in between the blocks, shown here with the stars, and use setting triangles around the edges, again shown here with the stars. This is an illustration of the quilt repeating the same block but with sashing, cornerstones and borders. And finally, this is an illustration of a sampler quilt using some of the blocks from this quilt block series. The sashing in this quilt is in the white background fabric. The cornerstones and border is in a darker fabric to pop and frame the quilt. Want to learn more? Watch another one of my videos from the quilt block series. Click above to go to my playlist. I hope you liked this video. Please like and subscribe to my channel. More of these videos will be posted, so please tune in. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.